thanks you for joining us a second time today. I am
Who are you?
Yeah, we didn't even introduce ourselves this morning. I am Nor Kyle.
And she is the most important part of the nine-sided circle. She is the chief cook and bottle washer, the CEO and head of operations. I am Mushtaq Ali, and I am the flunky and the gopher.
A most excellent flunky and gopher, yes. So, thank you for joining us. I know some of you are joining us twice today. For those who don't know, every third Sunday of each month is our day that we do Two Talks. I tend to call it affectionately our Two Talk Sunday.
Very creative.
Brilliance. It just shines forth from me. So we do our 10:30 a.m. talk, and that's Pacific time, of course. And we also do our usually scheduled Sunday talk at 6:30 p.m. That one we do just about every single, for us, Sunday evening. Again, that's Pacific time. So you can join us at one or both of those, either one, or yeah, we have both of them because some people cannot join us at our usual time, and this offers another opportunity for folks who find our evening time a little bit, not a great scheduled time for them. They can always join us in the morning if they'd like, but it's really for everybody. So, with no further ado, I guess we do a little bit of a YouTube spiel, and we'll try to keep it on the brief side. Of course.
No, we won't.
Why do you gotta do that? I mean, we'll try. We'll definitely try. Okay, so like, comment, subscribe. Everyone says that. We need that from you too if that's something that you're interested in doing, because it helps us grow our channel in the most organic way possible. And we appreciate your comments. If you have questions or thoughts or stories that you want to share with us relevant to the content, feel free to share those. Anything else you want to add?
If you like our videos, share them with your friends. If you don't like our videos, share them with your enemies.
Yeah,
works out good either way.
Thank you, Mushtaq. I always forget the sharing part, but that's something that we are
sharing is caring,
encouraging as well. Yes. And of course, we have our Facebook group and our mailing list and my Substack and a link to our retreat, which is still going. We have our Sweden retreat that's happening in May, and we would love to have you join us. This is our first retreat ever, at least in person. We do have our virtual retreat that we hold once a year in probably around September this year. But if you'd like to join us live, this is your opportunity, and we're still holding open reservations or
I think we got 2 or 3 spaces still open, so fingers crossed we will get them all filled.
Right, and if you're on the fence, you can always email us, reach out, ask questions. We'd be happy to.
Or if you're on the fence, just come.
Yeah,
just come. It's going to be a beautiful week in one of the prettiest parts of Sweden at the nicest month of the year. May is like the best month to be in Sweden.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited.
And the place is like, it's posh. It's got a lake with rowboats. It's got really good food. So come, enjoy yourself. And we're going to do a lot of weird stuff.
Hopefully, I hope we do. All right.
It's going to be totally weird. Completely.
So let's end our spiel there. I don't think we have any other announcements to make, and let's get on with it. So this morning we discussed spiritual chivalry. So you'll find that this conversation we're having this evening is kind of a continuation of that discussion we had earlier.
So you don't have to have listened to that one. You can just jump right in here and it's all good.
Yeah. So this evening we are going to be talking about community in Sufism and also in the work of G.I. Gurdjieff, and where those intersect and where they are likely to have shared an origin. So Yeah, Mushtaq, why don't you get us started?
So, the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his entire family and everything about him, said, there is no monkery in Islam. Islam was not meant to have a priesthood. It was not meant to have monasteries where monks become renunciates. Celibacy was considered a bad joke. The Sufi way and the Muslim way is the way of the householder, the way of the family, of you do your work in community. And it's a very different way than things had been done in other places and in other ways, you know, where you decide you have a calling to become deeply involved in your practice, and you go off and you join a monastery and you live in isolation, which is not to say that people didn't do that from time to time. But they didn't usually stay there. At the end of his life, the founder of our particular lineage lived in a little cave that he dug for himself. But he wasn't isolated. Every day he came out of the cave and he talked with his students, and he made his living by the work of his own hand every day of his life. He was notorious for carving spoons. He made the best spoons. And it was really quite fun, because he would make spoons and he would put the spoons into 2 baskets on the back of his ox. And he would just send his ox off, and the ox would go to the marketplace and just wander around. And if you needed a spoon, you took it out of the basket and you dropped in some money. And if you didn't drop in the money, the ox would follow you around until you did. That's the story. And at the end of the day, he looked in the basket and he took out the money and he took whatever it was that he needed to feed himself. And then he gave the rest of the money away. And he did that, you know, into his hundreds. But he was never isolated in the sense of, you know, oh, I'm going to lock myself in a monk cell and not talk to anybody, and my food will be delivered to the door, and I'm not going to do anything useful, but just sit here and meditate or whatever. And I take that as an example of what community is supposed to look like. And you find this in the Anatolian region. You find this a lot. Back in the day, you had various groups that would they would be a community, oftentimes around a particular teacher or a group of teachers. But they might have, like, that building behind me up over here, like that. And people would meet there on a regular basis, but then they would leave and go out to their houses and their jobs, and they would participate in the community. And while their little teke would be a community center, it wasn't a place that you lived for the most part. There might be a few dervishes who lived there, but mostly people lived out in the community, and they interacted with the community. And through their work, they expressed their knowledge of the way in the community. You see that now. There's inshallah, it's still there. There was a restaurant or not a restaurant, a bakery in Istanbul. And the baker had this right outside the door, this place with loaves of bread and a little sign that says, if you need, take. And, you know, poor people would come by and they would take a loaf of bread if they needed it. And then everybody else would buy the bread. That's an example of doing your work in the community. and not just doing your work, but doing your work in a way that makes positive change in the world. Does that make sense? Noor, take it away. Over to you.
Well, I mean, I've done like a really brief video on this before in which I talked about how there is, at least for me, and I know that I'm not alone in this, there was this attraction for me to a life of solitude. I guess we could say the life of an ascetic, but more from the point of view of being dedicated to spiritual practice exclusively. And I kind of had to do a gut check about that and observe, is this about like a genuine desire to enter into some kind of monasterial cloistered environment, or is this more about an impulse toward escapism and to spiritual bypassing, that kind of thing? And as I really took time to analyze that, I realized for myself that yeah, it was unfortunately a lot of the latter rather than the former. But I also understood that I definitely wanted to dedicate myself to a spiritual life. And Sufism, I think, means different things to different people. But for me personally, it's a way of practice, dedicated practice, while avoiding getting stuck in that trap of escapism. And I guess there's a sense of obligation to be in engagement with the outside world in a way that is purposeful and is not separate from any kind of private practice I may or may not do. It's all holistically included. So when we have something like a teke, I feel like that is I guess we could say it's kind of like a community version of that kind of discernment where you choose to have a holistic lifestyle in which you are dedicated to a certain path with certain obligations and perhaps rituals and student mentor relationships, but you're not abandoning relationships with your family or with your trade or with your land, perhaps. So I think that that's the way that I might relate to this discussion, and I figured I'd just bring that in from the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is what it's looked like in the past. There's a great TV show called Yunus Emre, made in Turkey, got great music, and it tells the story of one of the great Sufi saints, and it shows him interacting with the whole community. In that particular series, you have the teacher's place, which is a teke, and the teacher lives there, his family lives there. Taptuk Baba is the teacher's name. And there's a few people who live with him, and everybody else comes, and then they go. And he is the spiritual guide to the craft guilds, to what they call the Achi brotherhoods, which have powerful connections to the Sufis, usually, especially in that part of the world. And you get to see how all of these areas interact to the good of the community, how the craft guilds work within themselves and with each other, because the leather tanning guild and the shoemaking guild have to be able to cooperate, or there ain't no shoes. There's just big piles of leather somewhere. And the farmers have to be part of all of this. And everything works towards the good of the community based around a spiritual ideal.
There's a very obvious quality of cooperation and collaboration. Yeah.
Yeah, and that gets to the real law of the jungle. You know, they say the law of the jungle is survival of the fittest. And that's not true. The law of the jungle is he who cooperates with his friends lives. He who doesn't dies.
Yeah, and we become quite distracted from that.
So what does this look like for us now today, Noor?
Well, I mean, one way we can think about that is what we're doing here, right? We have a time where we come together intentionally every week to sit as face to face with one another as possible and to interact in ways that are ideally going to be mutually beneficial and collaborative in the sense of we are choosing to share a common purpose, and that is to, in this setting, wake up together. And there will be challenges in that, of course, but I think we have found over the past, how many years now? 4 years, that we've been able to be pretty damn successful at that. And ultimately, that is the point, is it's not to just come and hang out, although it is lovely to be able to do that. It's to work towards that common purpose together in the ways that we are able to do so, and to take that as far as we can. It will also include us getting together in person for things like our virtual retreat or our in-person retreat. There are just different ways that we can meet each other on different levels and discover ways in which we can stay motivated and motivate each other towards deepening into our work.
Yeah. And in true Sufi fashion, when we work together, we oftentimes work in the realm of the physical world. For instance, Cherie and I might talk about her practices, but we might also talk about some problem that she's having with her business and how she might be able to make that easier for herself. Both of these are important. You know, and I know that various of us have reached out and helped various other of us at different times when that was needed and appropriate. I'm not going to mention anything specific about that, but it happens. And the people who are actually inside the door rather than outside the door have been very good about working together to mutual benefit, which I kind of dig.
When you say inside or outside the door,
People who, like Jonathan, is inside the door. He's somebody who comes and he studies with us. Cherie is inside the door. She's been putting up with me now for, what is it, 740 weeks or something crazy like that. People who are outside the door are people who watch the videos and go, oh, cool, I can see some benefit for me in that. And we don't know who they are. We don't really interact with them. And we are blessed by their presence watching our video, but they're outside, they're outside the teke, sitting around, drinking coffee, telling stories. Yes, Cherie?
As someone inside the door, I also know I have to accept things I don't want to hear. As Noor says, you know, when you're working and learning, not everything is perfect. And sometimes you're in a real proper state. And sometimes you need someone you trust to tell you the honest truth about your own behavior, about you may be just being misdirected in some way, or your perception or the misunderstanding or whatever it is. And the capacity to hear that and actually sit with it and actually use it instead of taking offense, that is part of being inside.
Yeah.
That's not easy. Yeah.
No, it's not. And the thing is, though, and this is cool, people will self-regulate. If you're not the kind of person who can work with that, you take yourself outside. We don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
see. Yeah.
I
go ahead.
noticed I was here for the talk a few hours ago. And when I was actually making a contribution, I happened to notice two other faces. I know if you're watching this on the replay, you don't get to see all the faces. But if you're here in the actual meeting, you get to see everyone's face. So another reason to join our group. But yeah, I noticed the two other faces, and they were squirming a bit, and as I was talking, and I was like, it's like something in what I said made them uncomfortable, and I don't want to have that effect. So that was my opportunity now to think back. You know, what did I say, and how did I say it that caused that effect?
And you have to understand that at times, it may be your job to make people uncomfortable.
I was going to say, you know, that's kind of a
Two-edged sword?
yeah. I
A
didn't
double-barrel
necessarily...
shotgun?
Yes.
A double-bitted axe. Yeah, all of those metaphors for two things.
Yeah, and it's challenging because I think we all come up against that. Like you, Jonathan, I don't necessarily always want to make people squirm, and at the same time, I know sometimes I just need to say the thing and hope that I'm doing it in a way that is compassionate in the sense of, you know, as someone says, is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? Like if I'm basically doing an okay job at following that, then I feel pretty good about saying what I need to say.
Yeah. I don't follow that one because other people want to define what that means for me.
Yeah, and that's challenging because
Yeah.
it's one of those things where we have to learn a lot about ourselves and discover what feels like a kindness, in the sense of sometimes people need to hear something that will land as unkind, but it's coming from a truly kind place. And that's a whole thing for another time. But it's just a little starting guideline that you don't have to give any more due to than you feel is appropriate. So, Sharif.
Yeah, yesterday, Mushtaq and I were talking about a difficulty I was having with a particular person. And he said, think of it as a gift to me that this thing was happening. And that switched me around. Instead of thinking how horrible this is that I should have this experience, it was like, oh, what's the gift? What's the thing that I'm learning or discovering? Being able to express myself more clearly and not feel so bad about it. That was actually so helpful, because sometimes you just need that switch, that interruption of something that I was really annoyed about, and then, oh, a gift. Oh, It was an odd thing, but it helped me switch from that state I was in.
Yeah.
I'm watching Breakpoint at the moment. It's about tennis, of course, because I love tennis. But the fact that one of the players was talking herself into losing, and her coach was saying that I had to interrupt her thought process, and he can't say anything to her because she's playing. So he just stood up in the middle of the stand, and he never does that. And she saw it, and she looked at him, and he looked at her, and then he sat down. And it's kind of like that. It's like, it's just a little phrase, gift to me. And it's just like, oh, ding. And it's the bump that I needed. So,
and yeah, things emerge.
Not a bad thing.
Exactly.
The squirm's not a bad thing, because we're a little bit too comfortable. So we need to hear a squirm. And actually to have it mirrored in ourselves, we think, oh yeah, I can feel that. Oh, I do that, or whatever. It's actually a good thing. I actually really enjoy your comments, Jonathan.
And there's also, if we're able to notice ourselves squirming, what is it that might be bringing that on? What kind of response is that? What kind of reaction is that?
Yeah, because my ego was being poked, and Mushtaq pointed that out to me. He said, your ego's just had a bit of a poke, and you're feeling, well, I was feeling righteous about what my position was. But then having what was happening explained to me in a different way, I think that is a gift. That is a wonderful gift to me. And I don't feel the heat of the upset anymore, not in the same way. And that's what happens in these discussions, I think.
Yeah, ideally.
Ideally, if you're listening and actually letting that settle into your bones.
Yeah.
So
and if we're doing our job.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Like if we're doing a sloppy job at that, then it gets a little dicey, but we do try to do the best that we can do.
And I think all of us are starting to listen to the gut. You know, you're listening to that feeling in your belly, in your breath, in the way you've dropped into a certain posture, the way you set your face, the unconscious jaw clenching, all of those different things. Once you start feeling those and noticing those and actually feeling those, because I was listening to someone talking about proprioception. We're all sighted people, but you close your eyes, how do you know where you are in the world? Is that all these other senses come alive, all your proprioception comes alive. You can actually really feel where you are in space. You're not trusting where you are in space, but you can feel it and you go your way slowly. I think that's quite lovely, actually. Sometimes we need to close our eyes.
Truly. So how does this relate to what we're talking about tonight? We have just passed through a transitionary phase, I think. We had the old style Sufism. Then we developed in the last 60, 70 years, what I think of as ashram Sufism, where you have little communities. And we saw this a lot in the 60s. You know, in the 1960s in San Francisco, there was a guy by the name of Samuel L. Lewis, who founded the Sufi Islamia Ruhaniyat Society, which was an offshoot of the Sufi Order of the West, which is an offshoot of the Chishtis. And it was a bunch of hippies, a bunch of young hippies who did what they called Sufi dancing in the park. And so they tended to live somewhat communally. And you sought out a fair bit with this idea of, we're going to get together and we're going to work together and we're going to live together. That was not entirely successful, but it was a start. And now we are at this place where we're creating something that has never happened before, ever, in the entire history of humanity that we know of. I mean, maybe if there was some antediluvian civilization of great heft and superior technology, they had a better internet than us, but so far there's no evidence. I mean, there is no time in the history of humanity where we could sit and talk together, even though we're in California and Jem is in Belgium and, you know, Amina is in Jordan and
Canada.
you know, yeah, we're all over the place.
Yeah.
And this requires a whole new form of community building. And in some ways, it's modeled off of this idea of meeting at a central point and then dispersing to do your lives and then coming back and meeting and doing this. And this is where Gurdjieff's work came in. He went through a number of different iterations of how he was with his students. And there were times, especially when he was in the Caucasus, you know, he and his students escaped from Russia during the revolution, and he basically took care of them. You had this pack of functionally helpless Russians and one canny Turk who was, yeah, I know he was part Armenian, part Greek, whatever. But he was able to function in ways that kept them all together and all alive until he could get to a place where they were safe and he could begin building his school. And he had his school in France. And that was his headquarters for the rest of his life, even though the way he taught transitioned from time to time. But it was that idea of, here's a meeting place, people will come and they'll stay here for a while, and then they will go back out into the world, and other people will come and they'll stay. And then the first people will come back while the second people go out into the world, and on and on. And now we have, you guys are so far away, you may never come to the central dervish community that we don't have anyway. But we have this new way of working together if we can only figure out how to do it.
Yeah. And it is fragile in that it is dependent on the technology that we have. And I think instead of holding that with fear, we can hold it as Shuri said, a gift that we are given right now to make the most of and to embrace as thoroughly as we can, so that we can do the work that we are here to do together and carry it out into the world, whatever that ends up looking like.
Yeah, and in order to do that, we have to develop a sense of community. In the virtual world. And we don't even know what that's going to look like yet. So we have to be willing to be surprised.
This is still kind of in its baby form, you know?
Yeah.
Still seeing how this can grow and develop and mature. Dogs barking and all.
Dogs barking and all.
Yeah, Cindy.
Well, I must admit that having Noor and Mushtaq and the others so accessible, so engaged and friendly is a great start. I think I can speak with anyone here probably quite freely. And I've not always experienced that with online groups. And so that makes all the difference in the world. To be able to just connect easily connect. I've emailed you, Nor, several times, and you're right back to me as soon as you possibly can. It's like, oh, that's really cool. It's not a given.
Oh, it's not. Me responding immediately is not a given either, but we do the best that we can. Yeah. And thank you for sharing that, Cindy. I do definitely, I think we both do appreciate that a lot. Yep.
So how do we go about doing this? I mean, in a certain sense, Nora and I have been talking about this since our very first video. We've been laying down the foundation stones for what it takes to create a true work community in the 21st century. Whether we are doing it successfully or not, we won't know for a couple of years. So far, so good. And it seems to confuse people. The number of times that we have gotten messages that say, you know, you would be more successful if instead of doing it the way you're doing, you would do it this way, which is the way that every YouTube video does their thing. And what they don't realize is that we are not after what every YouTube video is after. We aren't after the likes and the subscriptions and people watching our videos so that we can make money off of the advertising. Inshallah, you will never see an advertisement on our videos until you get to the very end. We have consciously worked hard to make sure that you are not subjected to that garbage. And that's antithetical to the model. Also, what the people who are viewing this on YouTube are actually seeing is a class, a sohbet, a conversation. And I've had people say, oh, you should just lecture and then take questions at the end. But that's not what we're about.
Yeah.
We are about the conversation because each of you brings something important to the group. If it was just Nora and I, we could just sit around at home and, you know, I'd cook dinner and we could talk and we could answer each other's questions and it would all be good. But it isn't that. Together we create something that is greater than Nora and I.
So much greater.
Yes, and that's part of the idea of community in the Sufi sense. Not in the Gurdjieffian sense, because that was very much, you had the teacher who was the font of knowledge and these students who were all stupid. And that's a model that began dying out in the 70s and 80s. We had so many people doing that model, Carlos Castaneda, Lynn Andrews, all of these people who were the stupid student to the wise teacher, but they were also the gatekeeper to the teacher's knowledge. And that's not a Sufi community. Which is good because I ran out of wise knowledge months ago. I'm relying on you guys.
And thankfully, you've all been very generous in that regard. Yeah. Jem.
What I wanted to say is some ideas about this community that you were guys talking about. And indeed, we're going into this digital age where everybody's transforming, well, a revolution, let's say, digital revolution. But you have different generations and different generations have different interests. And I think if you want to talk to, let's say, to children, you have to need a different strategy. If you want to talk to, let's say, 20, 30 generations, you have to have different strategy and older people as well to engage them, let's say. For example, in China, what they do on TikTok, or they have it's educational videos only, and they've only access them within certain hours, which they're having a leap up front and looking at Europe or the States. But also with what this group community from the Nine-Sided Circle is doing, you have you have the YouTube channels with a different participation level, you have the Facebook group, the forum, you have the live sessions with a different participation level as well. And then if you really want to be engaged, then you have this live Terga sessions that we have, which go more into the core. But for everyone, there's something, right?
Yeah.
Which is good, of course. And I think that you're right, it's baby steps, and it's with the metaverse coming up and all the other things as well. It is very important to get this community going, and we have to have a little bit of foresight to be able to see where we want to go. I think in general, when we say we, I'm not talking about the Nine-Sided Circle only, but as a whole community, I'm speaking. But I think, yes, we have to look at where do you want to see the world going in 10, 20 years, and making plans and strategies for that. And I think also nowadays with what Mushtaq Ali is saying, that many companies as well, if you look at capitalism as well, you see pyramid structure always. You have a clear CEO always on the top, which has its authority. But when you look at more successful companies, which in this digitalized age, they have a flat hierarchy. So there's indeed a clear leader, but they're not misusing their power. And I think the structure that you guys are having here in the Nine-Sided Circle, or that you're having, let's say, you have more this flat hierarchy, where you or Noor and Mushtaq Ali are not misusing their power, which is more like this classroom structure, which is in the lines of this more successful companies, young companies, etc. So I think compliments are just what I'm giving and just affirming the things that you guys are doing. But I think, yes, these are my ideas of communities.
You make a lot of good points. Yes.
Yeah. And you're absolutely correct. One of the earliest videos we did was on the difference between vertical and horizontal teaching. Vertical teaching is guru on the top, lowly disciples on the bottom, versus horizontal teaching, which is we're all in this together. And everybody's smart and everybody knows something. And we need to remember that the best ideas can come from anywhere. There's one of my favorite stories. So somebody asked, how many teeth are in a horse's mouth? And this question was put to the wise and the learned. And they gathered together in the great libraries of the monasteries of the kingdom, and everybody was researching and going through all of the books and all of everything. And through all of scripture, they read through the holy books 20, 30 times. And after months of research, they finally went to the king and said, I'm sorry, Your Majesty, the Holy Scripture is silent on this, and so we don't know. And there's this kid over there sweeping, and he looks up and says, why don't you just count? And of course, they beat him up and threw him out, and he had to go off. But then he became a saint and got his own monastery and treated people much nicer. But that whole idea from just, out of nowhere, just count.
Duh.
And obviously, the city that was going through this problem was not an equestrian city. They were all pedestrians, because any culture that lives with horses is intimately familiar with their horse's teeth.
Yes, critical thing in horse health anyway. So if you want to
Yeah,
love your horse,
and if you want to
gotta
know
take care
how
of your
old a
teeth.
horse is, you look at
Yeah.
his teeth. That's like the old saying, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. That means don't check his teeth to see his level of health and all of that sort of thing. But if you're not an equestrian society, Holy Scripture is silent on this.
So, while we have gone quite a ways, I think, towards building this community, there is always more building to be done. This work is never
Yes.
done, really, because relationships take continual work, continual mutual exchange, and we are always trying to find ways that we can create camaraderie without making it more than the community can bear, if that makes sense, because we all have limited resources in terms of
Yeah.
time and energy that we can offer, and yet we do offer each other the time that we can as a gift, and I
Yeah.
just want to
And
thank you all for that.
we need to understand. Now, Noor and I could just sit around and write books, right? We could do that. We're smart. She knows how to spell. And we could put a lot of ideas out with books. They would probably do well. People would go, wow, look at this book. Ain't it cool? But you know what happens with that is people don't learn that way. So we could make money. We could have a bestseller. We could get on Oprah with our books. And people would not learn from it. People learn through interaction in community. You will learn more here, having a conversation, than you would ever learn reading a book that we wrote. It's true. And if you're participating deeply in what you're doing, if you are part of the digital Durga, if you are talking with us one-on-one, if you're like checking in the forum and all of that, you will learn even more, because it's the interaction that creates the lesson. It's not the information, it's the interaction. And this is one of the secrets of Sufism. This is why Sufi tariqas are arranged in the way they are, is because it's the interaction that makes it work. And, there are whole villages. There is a village in Turkey called Hacı Bektaş, which is named after a famous Sufi saint, the founder of the Bektashi order. And basically, everybody in this village is a Bektashi. And they all work together like that. So that's kind of what we have to say about community and why community is important, why it was essential to the development of Sufism. I mean, Sufism started out with these wandering dudes for the most part.
I have a plant called a wandering dude. So
yeah, we have a plant called a wandering dude. So yeah. And from there, people started hanging out with the wandering dudes. Back in the old days of Hassani Basra and Junayd and all of these guys, it was just like one dude. And people would come and they would hang out with them. And then somebody went, hey, wait a minute, I have a house. Let's go over here and get out of the rain. And the next thing you know, there are techies and whirling dervishes and all of this kind of stuff. And that part of the evolution of the path has reached its limit, and we are now into a new phase. And this is a qualitative phase. And this is important to understand because we have to make the qualitative changes. There's a Catholic priest and anthropologist by the name of Teilhard de Chardin. Very famous guy. He kind of got into trouble because he was involved in the Piltdown Man scandal. For those of you who know your ancient history, But he observed that evolution was real, and it was two phases. He said, you start out with something, and that something makes quantitative change over time. When that something gets to a level of complexity where it can no longer make a quantitative change, it must make a qualitative change. Yeah, that person.
Yes.
And he observed, he said, look, you have matter, you have chemicals. Chemicals get more and more and more complex in the primordial soup. At a certain point, those chemicals get so complex, and in this case, the chemical that gets really complex is called DNA. It gets so complex that it cannot get more complex without there being a fundamental qualitative change in what is. And so you get life, right? Life starts out as, viruses and single-celled organisms, and then they start clumping together and they get more and more complex until you get fishes and amphibians and reptiles, and things move out onto land, and they get more and more complex until they cannot get any more complex. And you get a qualitative change in intelligence. And he goes through this. He makes a really good argument for it. I think it's a great metaphor for how things actually work. So if we are looking at quantitative and qualitative change, we are at a point where the quality of how we do the work must change. We can't just add another room on the teke. The teke has to change. The tarika has to change. It can't be a bunch of people who, when I was a young dervish, I feel like that should be a song. When I was a young dervish, right? I traveled 3 hours each way, at least once a week, to spend time with my teacher. So 6 hours worth of travel. I could do that because I arranged my life in such a way that I could do that. Most people can't. Think about it. If you had to spend 6 hours going to see your teacher, would you do it?
Could you? Could
Yeah.
you do it?
Could you do it? And this isn't just spiritual teacher. I did this with my martial arts teachers. I would literally pick up and move across the country to study with somebody. And I did that several times. I would move to a different country. I went and spent months in Indonesia just to study there because what they have is so cool.
I just had a thought.
Yes.
A bit of inspiration just came to me about the fact that the way you describe having to get up and go and pack up your shit, sell off whatever you didn't want to bring with you, and then live in some, not too harsh, but some pretty uncomfortable or bare bones conditions.
Bare bones condition compared to most people.
Yeah. And you were in a position where you could handle that physically and
and
practically.
financially and all of that.
Right.
Most people can't. If I had had a family, I couldn't have done that.
That's where I want to head with this, is that the way that we get to do things now, where we are all, we can have our critiques of this being so sedentary, and there's something to be said about that. But that's again a tangent I'd like to put aside for the moment and just bring our attention to the fact that the way that we are creating this qualitative evolution of the teke and the tarika allows for more accessibility for many more different kinds of people than it may have been possible in the past. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and that's one of the cool things is people who did not have access before can have access.
Yeah, and it's not perfect. You still have to have access to technology, and that's a place where many people do not have access, but we have definitely seen the pool of people who have the ability to at least get online expand, thereby expanding the pool of people who are able to do activities like this. Yeah.
Yep, it is hard to use the internet if you don't have electricity.
Right. Mhm.
So we're not perfect yet, but I will tell you that you get better cell phone reception on the top of Kilimanjaro than you do in a lot of places in California. Let that sink in.
Yep. So, although there are many things that we may critique about the evolution of our technologies, I think that when we have discussions about things like this, the good becomes more substantial, more tangible, more evident. And, let's take advantage, just like we're doing now.
So,
So I
yes.
Yeah,
have,
Mr. Kim.
okay. Yeah, I was thinking about what Mustaq asked before about what's the role of the chivalry that talk about in the
Chivalry, yeah, yep.
in the previous talk, in the community. Is that has to do with the role of the community, or is that it has a different?
Well, community offers an opportunity to practice chivalry, Everyone is kind of sitting together, I guess we could say.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, when you have real community, at least a Sufi community, chivalry becomes an inherent part of it because
yes.
your kids learn it at the feet of their elders and in school. Everybody has the example of how people should interact with each other. And that's something we don't have at all now in most of the world that I can see, at least most of the modern world, I should say. If you're in America, there's no chivalry anymore.
There's a shadow of it, then that's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. I will hold the door open for you, Noor.
No, he's actually quite chivalrous, and I try to return the chivalry. It just shows up in different ways for one another. Because as we said this morning, this is not a gendered thing per se. I mean, it really is not. It's just that different people have different needs, and the way that we express chivalry towards them may differ from person to person. So yeah, I hope that you all will find those ways in which our topic from this morning and this one kind of intersect, in that this morning we talked about how the practice of spiritual chivalry is, you kind of need people to practice it on. You need people to teach you how to do it. You need people to help you do it better, perhaps learn how to do it better. And the Sufi community offers kind of a setting in which you can practice and refine that. it all ties together in that the reason why Sufism and Futwa were intersecting is because Futwa was the moral code, and Sufism offered the way to live out the moral code.
The techniques by which you could embody the moral code.
Yeah, thank you. Yep.
Yeah. So let's check with peoples like him,
Yeah.
who was
Yeah.
sitting there being so quiet, snuck in when we wasn't looking.
Hi, Hind. Good to see you.
So what do you think?
Well, hi everyone. I think yes. I just want to say that it's already a good. It's for example for us, because we can't travel. We can't. It's always a good to know that we have a space and time to come and to have this kind of talk. It's like a little compass for us, in the middle of all this, our lives, to have this time that we can connect to our spirituality. And so that's good. That's a good thing. And yeah, about the work in the Sufi way, as I see it, it's like the fourth way in the Gurdjieff teaching. So everyone in its place, by doing the work and doing his job, doing it well, and passing the values of moral values to the community, to everyone he meets, by incarnating the value. So each one in his position by doing well his work, his job, in that way he's passing the values of the teaching.
Definitely.
And yes, certainly, when you have a teacher, or when you have someone that can guide you, it helps a lot. But in now, when we yes, I know we can have that one-on-one, but at least we have this space. And personally, I know that whenever I have a question, I can just come and ask, and I will have the answer.
God willing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, or at least, probings towards even more questions, perhaps. But thank you, Hind. Yeah.
Thank you. And yeah, that's true, that the way it is, everyone can talk, and we are sharing, because sometimes the answer comes from not even the teacher. Because we are students, but also we can be a teacher, and the same thing. So there is always a sharing, there's always something to learn about anything.
Yeah, I would say that frequently the answers do not come from the so-called teachers. They come from within the group.
Yeah.
And that's how it's supposed to be. The teacher and the student create the teaching together. It's not a one-way street.
Yes, and there is one I've read something. Well, the meaning, I'm not sure if I'm going to say it right. When the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yes.
And when the student is ready, the teacher disappears.
I like that. Yeah.
And also, when the teacher is ready, the student appears.
Yeah.
That's also true.
Yeah.
Or they just dissolve into one big old thing, you know, at a certain point where kind of balance starts to appear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome hint.
Yeah, but yes, but personally, I would like to come to the retreat, but yeah, I can't because I have my kids. He has 5 years, and my husband and my oldest son every week they do 1 hour and a half going and coming back from Teke, how do you say? Yeah. Each week they do that. I used to do that before, but it's their time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can relate to that long drive. It's a thing.
Yeah.
But
they're happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's also important that you get to be happy.
Yes.
And maybe next year you tell your husband, you get to do this. I'm going to go and do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he might realize that that's the right thing to do. You never know.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I'm just like going with the ease of things.
Yeah. And that's the best way to do it.
Yes.
And that's why we have this virtual teke here.
Yeah, and yeah, that's I'm so grateful for that. Yeah.
You know, like so many things make it worth doing, but hearing that feels particularly weighty for me because I know how hard it is for mothers to find time for themselves to participate in things like this. So
yeah,
parents,
I do participate, but in like a weekend or yeah, I cannot go like for especially because my husband works too, and yeah, it's kind of complicated.
Yeah.
It's life.
Complicated is our specialty.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank
yeah,
you.
but yeah, we accept it, this is how it is now.
Yeah.
And this is also a teaching.
Yes.
Excellent point.
And there will come a point where Allah will change your circumstances.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Levita, how about you? There you are. Yeah.
I'm still working on the whole I'm still kind of blown away by the whole, why didn't you just count the horse's teeth? Because that's what I was thinking as you were telling the story. I'm like,
right.
Well, why don't they just go find a horse? And then, so I thought, okay, it must be something I'm missing. And then it was like, so.
Yeah.
You would be the person who asked that question. So
right.
I have been the person who asked that question, and I also got beat up. So I totally relate.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just sitting there like, oh, okay, so that's a thing.
It's a thing. Yeah. I'm glad you made it here tonight, though, Levita. It's great to have you.
Me too. Me too.
All right.
And I see that you are still stuck in wherever it is that you're stuck in.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Well, tomorrow I take my car in and hopefully they will tell me that they can do something about why they thought it was the computer. But my children gently corrected me because they said, you know, it kind of seems like you're really desperate to get away from this. It was like, no, it's a control issue for me. So I was like, no, it's not that. So I'm just kind of enjoying the extra time. And the weather is lovely here. It's nice and warm.
Yeah,
That's always nice.
that's the spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Levita.
Thank you.
I know you missed a little bit at the beginning, but yeah, do you have any thoughts you might like to share? Are you all set?
Is that me?
That's you, yes.
Yeah.
We are interested in what you think, especially since you're one of the crazy ones who keeps coming back twice in one day.
I've actually tried sorting out my appointments so I can have the middle of the day free so I can join my community, which is, it actually feels really good, and I look forward to it. I was really excited when I saw the email yesterday about the other talk, and then I thought I missed it, and then I was so sad about that, and then I was excited because I've got 2 videos waiting for me. So yeah, it's been a blessing. But this conversation around community, I'm here sitting in my kitchen, and as you guys are talking about community and why, and my eyes got stuck on my on some grapes.
Yum.
And in Turkish we have this saying, üzüm üzüme baka baka kararır, which means the grapes take their color by facing one another. And that idea about the chivalry, and we need a community in which we can bounce these things off. And then in the scientific world, they talk about the mirror neurons.
Yes.
And so whoever you're hanging out with, whoever you're spiritually or mentally connecting with, emotionally connecting with, they're the color you're going to take, or that's the place you're going to give your color to. So it's really important to find like-minded, like-hearted, like-spirited, like-souled people. And it's quantity. It's not quantity, it's quality over the quantity. I mean, it'll be wonderful if it's both quantity and quality, but if we have to choose, obviously it's quality. And it's that quality that allows you to keep gaining on that quality and get that color of rightness internally and externally. And like Cherie was saying earlier, when I logged on, it was like, yes, I can so relate to that. It's good to be made uncomfortable for the good of you, because the more you can shred a little bit more of your ego, which you thought you never even had at times, the better you become grounded. And as you get grounded, you find heaven. So yeah, it's all good. And beloved Sister Hind, yeah, circumstances change. There was a time when I thought I was a prison and that life would never change, and now I'm a free woman. So, you know, things do change, and that's the only constant, really. But we want to connect with people who we want to change together with for the better, and that's why community is essential. Like we spoke this morning about what we're up against in the world and how fast it's shifting more and more, especially since the late 90s with obviously with the information overload and people not knowing what to do with it because they're not adult enough to know what to do with it. It just makes it harder. So therefore, we can't stand against this wind on our own. We do need, if it's 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, doesn't matter of quantity, it's the quality. Then we've got the strength of when 2 people, one of my teachers says, when 2 people come together, they have the strength of 11. And when 10 people come together, they have the strength of 111. So it's the quantity and the hearts and minds connecting and having the courage to have the conversations, the deeper conversations, the uncomfortable conversations, and the conversations that we think are common sense, but we realize, like Lavida was saying, we realize it's not so common, you know, and we need to be willing to have those conversations too. And yeah, and so I just feel super blessed, guys. Thank you for creating this space, and thank you, Allah, for leading me to you.
Aw.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, thank you all for creating this space with us. That's
Yeah. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be here.
so. I know we promised to keep this one a little bit shorter after
We lied.
being around for quite a while this morning. But yeah, I think, does anyone have any brief last thoughts to offer before we wrap up? All right, I'm gonna just, take the initiative to invite us to Brady Bunch mode so we can.
Voila.
Yeah, great. All right. So thank you again, everyone, for showing up. It's been so
Yeah,
lovely.
it's always
Yeah.
wonderful to have you guys come and hang out with us, or let us hang out with you. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah, wave to each other, wave to everybody on YouTube.